reading from the 18th Psalm, verses 20 through 24. Psalm 18, 20 through 24. The Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanness of my hands, he recompensed me. For I have kept the ways of the Lord, and I have not wickedly departed from my God. For all his ordinances were before me, and his statutes I did not put away from me. I was blameless before him, and I kept myself from guilt. Therefore, the Lord has recompensed me according to my righteousness, according to the cleanness of my hands in his sight. I've read for your hearing the 18th Psalm, verses 20 through 24. May the Lord add a blessing for the reading and the hearing, and especially the doing of his word. Now, did that passage sound familiar? Did it? It should have. It's too early for you to be asleep. In fact, it is the passage that we just heard Deacon Cindy Toto read so well from 2 Samuel. Psalm 18, 2 Samuel, they sound the same. They are the same. So why is it that what was recorded in the 18th Psalm is recorded again without modification in 2 Samuel 22? Well, to answer that question, you'd really need to look at the Bible chronologically. We're not accustomed to looking at the Bible chronologically because it's not in chronological order. In fact, if you try to read the Bible, you would really sort of confuse yourself thinking that you're reading the Bible in chronological order, because it's not. But if you studied the Bible chronologically, then what you would find is that the 18th Psalm was a psalm that David penned right after he was rescued and saved from Saul, King Saul, early on. And you might remember the stories that King Saul was disobedient, unrighteous toward God in his reign, and ultimately God stripped Saul of his power, God stripped Saul of his glory, God stripped Saul of his presence and gave it all to David, because where Saul was unrighteous, David was righteous. And God protected David even when Saul conspired to kill David. So the 18th Psalm would be an appropriate song, an appropriate thanksgiving to God from David, and it would be an accurate reflection of David at that time of his life. Yes, he was righteous. He could claim the cleanness of his hands. He could claim that he had upheld God's ordinances and statutes. He could claim that he was blameless and without guilt. But by the time we get to 2 Samuel, the 22nd chapter, we're near the end of David's life. We're near the end of David's reign. David reigned Israel for 40 years, and we're toward the latter part of that reign. Now, you'd have to ask, can someone who rightly made the claim of righteousness early on make that same claim later on in life. It's like a child being able to say, I'm blameless, and then an old man saying, I'm blameless. You might say, really? Really? Are you sure? Because see, what David said was, the Lord rewarded me according to my righteousness. According to the cleanness of my hands, he recompensed me. Cleanness of my hands. That's what he said. And you sort of say, really? Hands are clean? Are you sure? Because see, you have to understand that once upon a time, David had in his mind that he was going to build the temple of God. He wanted to build a glorious temple for God that all could come and be praised or praise God together in this wonderful, glorious temple. That's what he planned to do. That's what he wanted to do. He complained to the prophet Nathan, here I live in this palatial palace made of cedar. And our God, the living God, stays under tent curtains. To David, it didn't seem quite right. So he wanted to build the temple. But God interceded and spoke to David and said, no, you will not build my temple. Your son will build my temple, but you will not, because you are a man of war, and there's much too much blood on your hands. You've killed far too many. Your hands are not clean. You will not build my temple. And so you say, cleanness of hands, David? Really? I think not. Then what does David say in the next claim he offers to us? He says, for all of his ordinances were before me. His statutes I did not put away from me. Ordinances, meaning he kept the law? Really? Really? Well, I remember a time when the Ark of the Covenant had been captured during wartime by the Philistines. And the Philistines couldn't ultimately keep the ark because everyone who touched the ark seemed to come down with some sort of plague or problem. So the Philistines got rid of the ark, but the ark stayed in storage for some 20 years. Well, now David is the king, and David said, you know what? I'm going to bring the Ark of the Covenant back to Jerusalem. I'm going to bring it forward for everybody to see, and I'm going to have this great and wonderful parade so that everyone can cheer and be blessed of God when we in a celebratory fashion, bring the Ark home where it should be. And David, see, he had seen the Philistines put on this kind of parade, so he said, I know exactly what to do. We'll assemble thousands and thousands of people. I'll have an ornamental cart drawn with oxen, and we'll have musicians, and we'll dance and parade through the streets. Everybody can see the Ark of the Covenant coming into Jerusalem. It will be so wonderful, and I will get all the glory because everyone will be able to say David was the one that brought it in. Now, see, that was his plan. But see, as the ark started moving, what ended up happening? Well, one of the oxen tripped, which meant the cart dipped, which meant the ark slipped. And as the ark slipped, one of David's men grabbed the ark. Uzzah grabbed the ark, because certainly we didn't want it to hit the ground. But as he grabbed the ark, bam, Uzzah fell dead. Right then, right there. Why? Because Uzzah was not a priest. He fell dead because Uzzah was not a Levite. And by law, by the Torah, only the Levites could hold the Ark of the Covenant. This man died because of David. He was responsible for knowing the law and knowing the proper way to move the ark. But David was so consumed with what he wanted. He was so consumed about getting the glory for himself. He was so consumed by his desires that he didn't pay attention to the law, and a man died because of him. You kept the ordinances, you say? I don't think so. And then David said, I was blameless before him. I kept myself from guilt. Right. Of course, there's that little incident. I don't know, that little incident recorded somewhere on 2 Samuel around the 11th chapter. It was springtime. Springtime was wartime in these nations. You wait for the weather to get better and the nations go back to war. And so, as was customary, the king was supposed to go out with his army during wartime. The king was not supposed to be at home during spring. He was supposed to be out fighting in the battle. But for some reason, David was in Jerusalem, in his palace. And I don't know, he couldn't sleep one night, and so he wandered around the castle and happened out on his roof deck and looked out across the way, and there he spied a woman taking a bath. Ooh, she was beautiful. She was hot. She was all that and a bag of chips. And David had to have her. Oh, he had to have her. He called his servants and said, ooh, who is she? Or as the kids say, who that? And they found out she was Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah the Hittite. Uriah was in the army, and he was away fighting. So David said, well, send her over here. And he sent her over here, and she came, and he sent his servants away, and you can fill in the details. This is a G-rated worship service. And after it was all over, Bathsheba went home. But not too long after that, she sent another message back to the king saying, I'm with child. So now David knew he had messed up now. He messed up. So what David planned to do was he said, I know how to fix this. I'm going to have Uriah come in from the front. He can give me a report on how the war is going. And I know that with Uriah being right near home with a beautiful wife like he has, he'll just go home after he's given me my report, and everything will be sort of smoothed over. No one will be the wiser, right? So he sends for Uriah. Uriah comes on home, gives the report, but Uriah is a man of valor. He's a man of war. If the king is in the kingdom, his first responsibility is to guard the king and guard the kingdom.